Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. It's Tori, and today we are going to be talking about my priority sci-fi TBR. I've talked a lot about how I'm a complete newbie to science fiction, and it is a genre that I'd really like to get into more of in the next year or 2 years, and I've already made a pretty good dent, I feel like, this year, reading some more sci-fi, getting involved in some new series that had been standing out to me in the past few years as I've been gathering recommendations here on BookTube. I think I've finally compiled a list of the ones that I'm most excited to read. Now, I would love to hear down in the comments below your recommendations for books that I don't have on this list yet. If there's one that you think that I would absolutely love that's a character-driven, really interesting, well-written sci-fi, put it down in the comments below and give me a sales pitch of why you think I would enjoy it, because I am very interested in adding some more sci-fi recs to my TBR. Now, I do want to get the elephant in the room out of the way first, because the book that you're not going to see on this list is Dune. And obviously I own it, so before everybody panics, I am planning on reading Dune. I am planning on giving it a chance. But this is one that, if I'm being totally honest, I'm pretty 50-50 on whether or not I think I'm going to enjoy it. I am really looking forward to trying this at some point. I haven't been in the right headspace for it yet, which is why it's still languishing on my shelves unread. However, my expectations for this are pretty tempered, to be honest, and not because I don't think it's a good book, and I obviously have lots of friends who absolutely love Dune, but I'm not sure how it's going to land for me personally as a reader. So, looking forward to this, but it's not going to be on the list, also because it's one of the most popular sci-fi books that everybody talks about, so we're just going to put it back on the shelf. I will read it at some point. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it. The first series that I want to talk about, I've actually already read the first book, and this will be the only books slash series that I mention in this list that I have already started. But I wanted to talk about it just because I'm still thinking about it months after finishing the first book, which is a great sign. And I even purchased the second book in mass market paperback, which is a format that I typically do not like and do not keep. And that is The Serrano Legacy by Elizabeth Moon. Now, it's really funny that I actually started reading Elizabeth Moon's work with this series because her fantasy, her epic fantasy series, The Deed of Paxenarian, is something that has been on my TBR for a long time, and I have been so excited to read it. And it is still on my priority reads for 2025 to get to, but I actually picked up Hunting Party on a whim. I had bought this just as a, oh hey, Elizabeth Moon also writes sci-fi, cool. And when I picked this up, this was so different than anything I had ever read before. It was very character driven, which is something I obviously like, but it didn't feel like it was overburdened with the technology aspect of sci-fi. We had spaceships, we had, tinkering and repairing of things, we had systems that were very futuristic and different things like that, but it really was a similar-esque story to some of the fantasy that I read, where there's a military captain who is kind of at odds with her very posh noble employer and her posh noble employer's nephew, who's a complete brat, and they're all on this luxury yacht spaceship together, and Captain Serrano is trying to get the ship back into tip-top shape, oftentimes kind of dragging the people around her along. And out of this slowly builds a conflict that turns very dark. Darker than I was expecting this book to go. And it kind of just goes a direction that you do not expect whatsoever. The twists in this book in terms of the plotline totally floored me. And I'm still thinking about it months later, so I really look forward to continuing this. I did buy book 2, which is Sporting Chance, and I think there's like 3 books in this initial series, 3 or 4 books, and then there's some that follow a different character from this series after that. I'm not entirely sure, but I definitely at least want to read the Captain Serrano focused books in this series, and I do look forward to trying Sporting Chance sooner rather than later. Next, I'm going to hold up another, even older female sci-fi writer that when I was a kid, okay, I read a book called Shadowhawk by Andre Norton, and I thought for years and years and years that Andre Norton wrote historical fiction, which clearly she does, otherwise Shadowhawk wouldn't exist. I had no idea that she was a science fiction and fantasy author until I got onto BookTube, and even that only within the last year. So imagine my mind being blown, finding out that Andre Norton not only wrote science fiction and fantasy, she was literally known as the grand dame of science fiction and fantasy in the 60s and 70s, which is wild to me and very cool. So I did end up picking up a book of hers called Saraso of Space, and I'm not entirely sure if this is a good starting point, so anybody in the comments, I haven't found a ton of information on Andre Norton here on BookTube, unfortunately, which is part of the reason why I want to read some of her work. But if you know anything about her science fiction work and where to start, please let me know, because I'm very interested in thoughts from more well-read Norton fans than me. So what I understand of this book, and I'm pretty sure it's the first book in a series, but don't quote me on that, is that this one is the story of some down-on-their-luck space traders that somehow get gypped into going to an unpopulated planet or something of that nature, and it turns out to be nothing like what they were promised. And it's very, very short. As you can see, it's still in its protective wrapping, but it's still pretty short. And so I think this is going to be a great way for me to taste test more of that older sci-fi feel. Besides Shadowhawk, I have also read Forerunner by Andre Norton and enjoyed it. So I'm really looking forward to digging into yet another aspect of her writing and seeing what this is about. I think there's maybe going to be more humor in this one, which I'm looking forward to, because I do like well-written humor. My standard for that's pretty high, but someone who was called the Grand Dame of Science Fiction and Fantasy had to know what she was doing, right? I should have looked this up before I started the video, but I didn't, so I just looked it up now, and apparently this is book 1 of a 7-book series called The Solar Queen. So if I love book 1, there's more very short, easily digestible sci-fi novels after it, which excites me as well. So next one is Andre Norton's Saraso of Space. Let me know down in the comments if you're an Andre Norton fan, if you think that's a good place for me to start. Next up, we are going to talk about a more modern, popular science fiction novel that my husband actually read last year and really had a lot of thoughts on. He enjoyed it in part, in other parts he wasn't sure how he felt about, and he's been really curious to know how I'm going to feel about this book. And I have several friends that are a big fan of the story or certain aspects of the story and also are curious to know where I'm going to land on this. And that is Dan Simmons' Hyperion. There's a pilgrimage at the heart of this story that is told in sections from the points of view of different characters on that pilgrimage, and lush world building, and it's also very emotionally dark, which is something that I do enjoy for the most part when it's done well. I read the opening of this a while ago when my husband and I were doing a first lines challenge and was blown away by the opening of this book. I thought it was brilliantly written and really interesting. So I'm really looking forward to getting into it and seeing what I think. I am definitely curious because I hear a lot of polarizing opinions about different perspectives within this story, so it's going to be intriguing for sure. I've also heard that this book is influenced slightly by the Canterbury Tales in terms of just the structure and the type of story that it's telling and the way it's being told, which is also intriguing. So I'm looking forward to reading this so that my husband and I can have a discussion about it finally, because he has been very patiently waiting to know what I think of this book. And he was very intrigued by it because even in the parts that he wasn't as big of a fan of, he kept talking about it and kept thinking about it a long time after reading. So I'm hoping for the same experience, and I think in either case it's going to be a great discussion starter. Alright guys, for the next one we're going to put the cover up here, and honestly the cover was what drew me to this book in the first place, despite the fact that I have read other books by this author and really enjoyed them. Alec Hudson is also a fantasy author, and I've read The Umbral Storm and the Book of Zog by him. Really enjoyed The Umbral Storm, and the Book of Zog had so many like interesting cosmic elements that it made me very intrigued to try a more science fiction-esque novel. I think this one definitely still leans toward the cosmic side, but it's a story of a young man who's been exiled with his crew, and, you know, things that sound very, very familiar in terms of sci-fi tropes or even fantasy tropes. But I want to just read you the opening of the synopsis because the way that it's written is so incredibly intriguing, especially in lieu of having a giant star turtle on the cover. The streams bind together the vast reaches of the stellar tributary, plied by brave stream surfers and their telepathic star beasts. Some of these adventurers are heroes, some are rogues, and some just want to return from the void with their bodies and minds unbroken. So definitely some cosmic elements to this, and also coupled with Alec Hudson's very immersive and bingeable writing style, I just feel like this book is going to be so much fun to read. And on top of that, it's also a standalone from what I can tell. So that makes me even more excited to read it because I love the idea of having a one-shot set in this kind of galactic, immersive world. And also the idea of bringing the creatures into the science fiction element really excites me a lot because that's something that I always enjoy. So The Shadows of Dust by Alec Hudson is another one on my list that I am very eager to get to and try and see what he's going to do with something that's a little bit more sci-fi coded. All right, guys, we got another big one on the stack. Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. Half of the writing team that is James S.A. Corey, Daniel Abraham, is an author that I have absolutely loved the fantasy work from. After reading Long Price Quartet and just being blown away by how unique and intriguing it was and how much of a brilliant long game of a fantasy series that is, it made me want to put everything else he'd written or had a hand in on my TBR immediately. And Leviathan Wakes has been beloved by so many science fiction readers, and it is one of the more popular series that I do want to try and check out because, you know, clearly it's popular for a reason. I also really like stories that start out with a kind of nonchalant crew of people that know each other or work together, and then they stumble upon something that they never should have, and immediately it blows their entire world or universe wide open. And that is definitely what the synopsis suggests on Leviathan Wakes. Now, I do realize that starting this series is a major commitment because there's a lot of books and they're a little bit more chonky. However, I have heard that these read pretty quickly and they're actually pretty bingeable, which is great. And I feel like the writing style is going to gel with me pretty well just based on what I know of the series, and I have high hopes to really love this. I don't know if I want to watch the TV series or not. I definitely won't until after I've read the majority of the series, most likely. But I am curious to see what the original story looks like. I am just really excited to see what Daniel Abraham and his writing partner Ty Frank cooked up in this series because I have a hunch that there's going to be a long game in this one as well, and the payoffs are going to be really, really good. At least that's my hope. So this one is another popular sci-fi series that I'm really looking forward to trying. Next up is Claraara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. Ishiguro is an author that's been on my TBR for a long time, and I have several other books of his that I'm really looking forward to reading. But this is the one that I wanted to put on this list because I haven't talked about it a ton on my channel. This one is also a standalone, and it is narrated through the perspective of an artificial friend, an AI robot, I'm assuming, who is waiting for someone to come in and purchase her, and she's very observant, and she spends all of her time watching humans coming and going out of the store that she's in. And she's been warned about how fickle humans can be, and then I'm assuming as we go through the story, she is eventually purchased by somebody or something of that nature, and the rest of the story unfolds from there. This one sounds really intriguing, and I know enough about Ishiguro to know that he is going to be exploring some very deep themes through the lens of this AI-focused story. And I'm really looking forward to that because everything I've heard about his work just makes me more and more and more excited to read him. And I'm really upset, honestly, that I haven't read his books yet Whether this is my first Ishiguro or not, I am really looking forward to reading it, and I think that he's going to be an author, I hope, that lands really, really well for me in terms of his balance of character and plot, and especially those deeper themes. So Claraara and the Sun is definitely high on my science fiction TBR for all of those reasons. Alright guys, this one comes with a massive caveat. Because I'm excited to read it, I'm also very, very nervous. And I know that some of you guys have already read these, and I would love to know your thoughts in the comments about whether or not you think I'm going to actually enjoy this. But this is Big Damn Hero, which is the first book in the books written about the Firefly universe. Firefly is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. And so, of course, when I found out that there were novels written in that world, I jumped at the chance to get one on my shelves. That being said, so often, stories that we really love when they're turned into a different medium can fall apart exceptionally quickly. And not all the time. Sometimes they just add to, and they give us a chance to spend more time with characters that we absolutely love. And that is my hope. That is my genuine hope for the Firefly novels. I know that some of them, it's kind of a roller coaster in terms of which ones are really good and which ones are not, which ones are more well received. But this is the first one, and I am really excited to read this because anything more Firefly, I hope, is going to be a great experience. I love these characters so much, and I'm looking forward to seeing if the novels can even give me a tiny hint of the nostalgia that I felt rewatching the series or spending time with those characters again. So if you've read these and you absolutely hated them, let me down slowly, okay? Like, I'm very nervous, but I desperately want to enjoy these, or at least a couple of them. So getting back with the crew of Firefly would be an amazing experience, and I can't wait. This next one should make a lot of you very happy because it has been recommended over and over and over and over to me since I started talking about this author, since I started talking about my interest in expanding my sci-fi experience, and that is Shards of Honor, Book 1 of the Vorkosigan Saga by Lois McMaster Bujold, who I recently read her fantasy work, The Curse of Shalion, and was blown away by her prose style and her character work and the depth of the emotional investment that she was able to create for me within that story. And I really look forward to seeing how she takes those skills and applies them to science fiction, because one of my concerns about getting into science fiction a little bit more was that I was going to lose that character focus, which so far I have not found to be the case in the things that I've been reading. And of course I've been very picky, and I've been taking recommendations from people who know me really well, so that has definitely helped. But I think the Vorkosigan Saga is gonna hit beautifully with me, and I cannot wait to read this. The basic setup of the Vorkosigan Saga Book 1 is that we have a female starship pilot. I'm not sure entirely what function her crew serves in terms of like what their occupation is, but she is taken prisoner by another spaceship. Apparently there's a lot of, I think, political stuff going on, and I'm not entirely sure much of the story beyond that, because I've intentionally tried to keep myself pretty blind with this series because I don't want to know everything that happens going into it, only that it's going to be really good. And it's Lois McMaster Bujold, which means that it has to be really good because she's amazing. So I'm really looking forward to this. I can't remember, I'll have to look, I cannot remember how many books are in this series actually, but I think it's fairly long. It looks like there's 16 books in this series, and I'm not entirely sure how long they are. But again, if you fall in love with a set of characters or a story, more books in the series just gives you more time to spend with them. And I trust Bujold a lot when it comes to her vision for her writing, and that's only after reading one of her books. So really looking forward to Vorkosigan Saga, and thank you so much to everybody in my audience who has been consistently recommending this to me, because the more you guys talk about it, the more and more excited I get to read it. So trust that this book will be appearing on my shelves to read very, very soon because I'm really looking forward to it. Next up is In the Orbit of Sirens by T.A. Bruno. This is a book that has also been really high up on my TBR for quite a few years, even before I decided I wanted to lunge farther into the sci-fi sphere. This book is told through two different perspectives. The first one is a spaceship mechanic who is fleeing from a devastating war and goes to a distant planet. The other one is a scout who's trying to, I think, pave the way for refugees from the same war. And they land on a planet that is populated by a certain alien race or multiple alien races, and there's a pandemic that starts killing off a bunch of the colonists. Now, one of the reasons I'm most excited about reading this trilogy is because I've actually had a taste test of T.A. Bruno's science fiction already when I read Down Below Beyond by him a year or two ago, and one of the things that I will say about his writing skill set is that he can write alien races so well. I always say this because I feel like writing aliens is one thing, but actually making them feel alien is a completely different skill. And he definitely has it. Down Below Beyond has some fantastic alien cultures and creatures in it that actually feel like they're inhuman. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he translates that to a full trilogy. These are a little bit longer, and it's just such a bingeable writing style. I think I read Down Below Beyond in like 2 days because it's just so chapter turning. You can't put it down. So I'm really looking forward to checking this one out and reading more of T.A. Bruno's science fiction work because I enjoyed so much the first experience I had with it, and I've heard nothing but good things about this trilogy, and it's been on my TBR for way too long, you guys. I've had this book for ages, and it is about time that I read it. Alright guys, so this final book might possibly be the single most recommended, most frequently recommended book to me in the last year and a half by my circle of friends, because this, I have heard, is the most Tory sci-fi ever. That's what I've been told. And it is Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And this is the first book in a trilogy as well. And as soon as I even mentioned that I was interested in this book, it has been a constant flood of recommendations and people not just recommending it, but asking me, have you read it yet? Why are you not reading this? Tori, you're going to love this book. And I don't doubt any of you guys who've been recommending this because you all know my taste so well at this point. Apparently, this is the most sci-fi motley crew to ever sci-fi motley crew, and the starship captain happens to be a war hero, and like there's a lot of check boxes here for me as a reader. Okay guys, I am so excited to get to this trilogy, and the title of the trilogy itself, The Final Architecture, is just so interesting. I have read Adrian Tchaikovsky before, and I've really enjoyed all of the work that I've read from him up to this point. And I have a ton of his books sitting on my shelves because I know I'm going to really enjoy more of his work. And this is at the absolute top of my Adrian Tchaikovsky stack. So for all of you guys who are so insistent that I read this and love this, trust me, I am on board, I'm ready, I am here, I am seated, I am so ready to read this series. This had to be the last one on my list because it is probably my most anticipated sci-fi read of all of them at this point. And I can't wait. I really can't wait. So I'm looking forward to starting this, hopefully before the end of the year even, and getting going on this trilogy because I have a feeling that once I start, I'm not going to be able to put it down until I've read all 3 books. And I'm not mad about that. I have just been waiting for a series, and specifically a sci-fi book or series, to just pull me in, never let me go, and make me binge through it and just fall completely head over heels in love with it. And I have a hunch, I have optimism, okay, that this one could be it. So, Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky is my final book on the sci-fi most anticipated stack. I would love to know from you guys down in the comments which of these books you think I'm going to enjoy the most. Which books do you think, based on my reading taste, that I'm missing out on, that I need to have on my TBR, that you think I would absolutely love? And what science fiction books have been your favorites over the years? If you're a new reader or a reader that's a veteran in sci-fi, either way, I would love to hear your favorites down in the comments, because I add so many books to my TBR from you guys' comments. So you know what? I'm just embracing the torment at this point of the fact that my TBR will last a whole lot longer than I will. But I'm going to do my absolute best, you guys, to get to as many of these books as I possibly can and share my thoughts about them with you. Thank you again so much to everybody who's been recommending me these amazing books. I can't wait to share my thoughts on them. I hope you are having a fantastic week. I hope you're reading some 5-star reads, no matter what genre you're in. And I will see you in the next video.